Hey everyone, what's up? It's Amber here. This is like take 3,000 for me. Yeah, I kept on messing up a lot for some reason, but I digress. No, I digress, because I digress against the mainstream. Anyway, before we get started, quick shout out to, well, he's not up there anymore, Watchdog Man. He's really cool. He made this really nice comment, and yeah, thank you. I appreciate that, Watchdog. It really does mean a lot. So then, let me get that back up there. Alright, so in this episode we are going to learn how to create a basic scene. I did get started because, again, I did make some mistakes and I had to redo the tutorial a couple times. But effectively, we're going to make a little window thing here, and in this window it's going to display some text above, and we're going to have some little data on the right, explaining what they are. So Too Long Didn't Read version, this is a tutorial about using data or objects, displaying said data in a scene, creating scenes, and understanding, well, the scene workflow in general. So we're going to be a little bit more organized than we were before. Let me go ahead and close out all these classes real quick because you guys don't need to read all those. I don't want to confuse anybody. First things first, we're going to temporarily alias scene title.start. Very similar to what we did with the map. We're going to do STS equals scene title.prototype.start. We're going to do scene title.prototype.start equals, and we're going to call the old scene title start just as we normally would do with an alias. And then we're going to type in scene manager.goto my scene. Remember, the capital letters are very important because that's the name of our scene, which we'll be creating here soon. Now, we're going to organize, as I was mentioning. We're going to do a comment and some kind of little symbol here, whatever you would like, and then the name of said category. That's so if you have like a lot of code, you can just quickly go to Windows, for example, and you don't have to worry about like it trying to find window like in any other, like in a string or anything like that. If you have little symbols beforehand, you can basically hop straight to whatever you're looking for. Functions, scenes, yeah, or if you're not really sure, just use a little arrow symbol and boom, you can just shift through all three of them until you can, yeah, you don't even have to necessarily type the category. You just type the little symbols here and you can quickly jump to the things until you get to the one you want. It all depends on you, but I definitely prefer setting it up this way. It's kind of clean. Now, instead of typing window base.prototype.line_height every time we turn around, we're going to write a function called getWhenLH, and it's going to have a multiplier argument. And it's going to return window base.prototype.line_height times the multiplier. This is going to come in handy, big time. We're going to be using this probably quite a lot, to be honest with you. Now we're going to create a category called Windows. By the way, you may or may not need to pause this quite often to make sure you got everything before we continue. We're going to create a class called Window H. That's because Window Help already exists and I couldn't really get creative with the names. Class Window H extends window base, constructor, rectangle, super, rectangle, just like we did before with the gold window. We're also going to do a this.msg is equal to empty string. We're going to create a message variable, and we're going to call this.refresh. And in this.refresh, we're going to do this.contents.clear and this.drawTextEx. This.msg00. Again, very similar to how we did the gold window in the last episode. And we're going to create another little window here. This is going to be a window command. Now this is it's ever so slightly different than window base in the sense that this gives you options to select from. As you've seen, we have Pikachu, Bulbasaur, Squirtle, Charmander, and of course Eevee. And I'm using Pokemon because Pokemon is my favorite thing ever. So, window command has a default function called makeCommandList, and in that we have the commands this.addCommand. In the first argument is the name, is the text that shows up as the option, and the second option is the text that gets fired off when you press enter or when you select the item. And we're going to need to use this for determining which item we select. Finally, we're going to create our scene, and it's going to be called myScene. Class myScene extends scene base, not window base. And we're going to do constructor and super that has no arguments. Then we're going to do a command called this.makeWindows. does not need to be async. However, you can make it async if you want. It should not make that much of a difference, if at all. So we're going to do this dot window h equals new window h. We're going to do new rectangle, and the x is going to be 0, y is going to be 0, graphics.width for the width, and get when LH with the multiplier of 2 for the height. Then we're going to add child, so we're going to do this dot add child, this dot window h. Now we're going to do this dot window opt equals new window options, or well, window opt. Don't type window options. We're going to do new rectangle, x is 0. The height the y position this time is equal to the height of the last one. You can either do it this way, or you can do this dot window h dot height. But that's a little bit longer to type, so I prefer just redoing this, even though it's a slight calculation. You don't need to recalculate it over and over again, but again, it's shorter to type, so we're going to just redo that. 240 for the width, graphics.height minus the height of the previous window. And that's effectively going to scrunch it down to here. It's going to start the position here, and the height is going to be the height of the rendering process minus the height of the help window here. And that's going to like make it fit, basically. Alrighty, so next we're going to create a data object. So we're going to get rid of that. Get rid of all these. We're just going to shrink all these down. And I'm going to put it below the functions. I want the functions to be on top. So we're going to create a category. We're going to call it data objects, I guess. Class Pokemon. And we're not going to be extending anything. Constructor. And in the constructor, we're going to actually have some arguments, or a argument. We're going to have data. We're going to do for let I in data. This I is equal to data I. So this way we can append any kind of data that we want directly using the data argument. We don't have to basically make a hot mess of code. So let me explain what this is doing. So let's say we have this dot Pikachu, right, equals new Pokemon. And in that, we can have all these different arguments. We can actually set the values that this dot Pikachu has without having to do this dot Pikachu dot type equals banana. This dot Pikachu dot mold equals IDK. What the heck is mold? But yeah, so you don't have to do all that stuff. You can just do this. You can do it all right here. So type banana. Mold TF. You can do all that here. This is going to be much better. Like a lot cleaner than it normally would be. So the for let I in data. I guess what I'll do is I'll go over this real quick. I'll go over it like this. For let I in data. Okay, so this is basically what's called a for loop, and it will start at index 0, which that's what I stands for, is index, and it will keep on going through all of the options that you have here. So however many options you have in data, in the case of Pikachu, we had 2 of them. We had banana and mold. So actually, it's not really a good combo, but I digress. So basically, it's going to start at 0, 1, it's going to make its way to 1, and then 2. Now in that, we have, right here, this I equals data I. So basically, it means whatever the data index is on, it's setting the self value to the data index value. Alrighty, now that I've confused you for the rest of your life, probably, we're going to go back to our scene. And then, I guess I'll keep it zoomed in, that way you guys can see a little bit better as well. Before this .make windows, we're going to do this .make Pokemon. I was going to do it after the windows, but honestly, it doesn't really matter the order, but I always like to make things before the windows. It's just a personal preference. Alright, so in the make Pokemon, we're going to do, let's try to remember what we got. We got Pikachu, Bulbasaur, Squirtle, Charmander, and Eevee. It's easy enough to remember. this dot Pokemon equals, and this is an object. Let's see here. There's a little curly brace. That's how you start an object. So this dot Pokemon, we're going to do Pikachu, new Pokemon, and then name Pikachu. And let's just throw in some arbitrary data. So we have the name, we're going to have a description. A yellow buddy. One zappy boy. We're going to have a little level, so we're going to do level 0. And some level 5. Now we don't want to add too much data, so we're going to end that off with a comma. I will let you guys get a hold of this real quick. I'll let you pause it, and yeah. Okay, so we're going to copy this now. Copy and paste it. Bulbasaur, lowercase b. Those new Pokemon, capital P in Pokemon. Name is Bulbasaur. A not yellow buddy. We're going to keep on doing this until we get to all 5. Alright, so here we go. We have all of our Pokemon now. Now, just to see if it's working, we're going to do console.log this.Pokemon. Now, when we do this, we should be able to open up a console and see our object here. We have Pikachu. There you go. His name is Pikachu. His description is a yellow buddy, one zappy boy. We got Bulbasaur, all these other Pokemon now. So our data object is working correctly. Now we want to actually display said data, right? So, how about this? In the little window help section, we will display the description. But on the right, we will display all the other stuff. So let's do it. So we're going to do update in our scene function here. And we're going to call the scene base update by doing super.update. Now we're going to do this.window.h.msg, not description, is equal to. Now this is where things get a little bit interesting. You can either do it all in one line, or you can create a variable that is already set to set value. I'm going to do both, but first I'm going to show you what not to do, and then I will show you what to do. So yeah, what you don't want to do is this.Pokemon, this.window opt.index. No, that's a really messy way to do things. So what you can, because we're going to be calling that multiple times, potentially. So what you can do instead is create a variable. So we're going to create a temporary variable called let ID is equal to this.Pokemon, this.window opt.index. So now all we need to do is call ID. We don't have to keep on calling the this.Pokemon thing over and over and over and over and over again. So this.window h.msg.refresh. No, this.msg. I can speak really friggin' well. This.window h.refresh. Now, you probably noticed this, and if you did, congratulations. If not, it's okay. If we were to try to do this right here, this would effectively call the entire object, right? But we want to call only the one that it's on. Right now, what we're doing is trying to call indexes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So, what we need to do instead is get the command name. And the best way to do that, let's do this little function here. So we're going to do this.Pokemon. We're going to press enter on the little arrow bracket here, because this is a sort of complex, very lengthy little thing here. So we're going to not want to get overwhelmed. This.window opt.command name, and then the index dot to lowercase. Alright, so we're going to create a little update function here. We're going to call the super.update for the default scene base update. So our data entries here, right? We're not using an array, we're using an object list, which I guess technically is still kind of an array, but we don't have values 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we can't just use the index or the selection that you have. The reason I decided to do it this way instead of using a regular array is because this is more complicated. I want to kind of throw the complicated stuff directly at you guys, but without a way that overwhelms you. The more you feel challenged and the more interested you are, well, the better it's going to be. The easier, the quicker you're going to pick up on code, basically. At least that's how it is for me. So I'm assuming that it's going to be the same for anyone else with ADD or ADHD. It kind of feels a little unstructured, yes, but nonetheless, you should be able to learn quite a bit from it. So as I was saying, we can't just do a 0, 1, 2. We have our names here instead. Pikachu, Bulbasaur, Squirtle. However, our names in the selection up here start with a capital letter, but these don't. So to get around that, we force lowercase the window command that you have selected. So we're going to create a temporary variable called ID, and it's going to be equal to this.Pokemon, and you're going to start a little bracket, a little half square. We're going to go a line down so you can kind of see what you're doing. It doesn't look like all one massive horizontal line, kind of like these. So we're going to do this.window opt, or the little choice window, dot command name, capital N, and then as the argument, and so in between parentheses, we're going to do this.window.opt.index. Index is the function that will return the selected index that you have. And then after that, we're going to force it to lowercase, so .to lowercase. And then we're going to close off the bracket, semicolon. To make sure that's working, we're going to console log the ID. So in other words, when we launch, you'll see that while we're hovering over Pikachu, you have Pikachu's data here. You hover over Squirtle, and we have Squirtle's data here. And that's effectively what needs to be done. So I will let you guys pause that or rewind it to go over that again. But once you have that, we're going to get rid of the console log, and we're going to actually display set information on the window help. So we're going to do ID dot, and we're going to display the description. So ID dot description. In other words, this is what we're about to do. You can see now the text changes up there to the description of the Pokemon that you have selected. So how we're doing that is we're setting the message variable that we had for window H. So .msg equals ID.description. And then we're going to refresh it. Now, why are we calling refresh here? Because here in a minute, we're going to optimize this. We're only going to have it refresh if you change the index, basically. So to do that, we're going to create another temporary variable, and we're going to do this one above the ID because we're going to make use of this in the ID as well. So we're going to do let index is equal to this.windowOpt.index. So now, this is already looking much cleaner. We just replace the command name, we just say index, lowercase. Now, to detect a change in the index, we're just gonna create a variable in the initialize function called this.index. So now we're gonna do in the update, if this.index is not equal to, so exclamation point equals equals for not equal to index, we're gonna do our little curly braces here. We're going to do our functions here, and then we're going to do this.index is equal to index. So now, it's only going to set the message value and refresh one time. So this saves on resources quite a bit because you don't have to constantly clear a bitmap and then redraw the text over and over again. So you should see that nothing really has changed visually, but in the background, it most definitely has. Now, we're going to add one more little window. This is going to be called window details. Extends, window base, constructor, rect, super, rect. Now, what we're going to do is change this one to be invisible. We're also going to do, we can keep the padding. Well, I'll go over padding in another episode. So this.opacity equals 0. That's going to change the window opacity. It's not going to change the contents. That's a different value, which we will also go over in the future. So, the refresh function, this.pkmn. So yeah, we're going to have a Pokemon variable here. I'm just going to have it equal to an empty object right now. So in the refresh, this .contents.clear, like we normally do. Then this .draw text, not draw text ex. This .pkmn .name, and it's going to be drawn at position 0, 0. This .contents.width for the width, and we're going to align it to the right, like so. And right underneath that, we are going to draw the level. So we're going to get when LH for the Y position 1, so that's going to be exactly 1 line height. And we're going to do the same thing. I guess now is a good time to explain how this stuff right here works. So, I don't know if I already explained this in one of the previous episodes, but I think I did. But just in case, next to the 1 on an American, well, US style keyboard, there's a little squiggly mark thing. It's called a tilde. And you can basically create, without holding shift, this little reverse quote thing. I don't really know what it's called. Let me look that up. And it's not even on the page. Dagnabbit. Okay, so it's called a grave accent. I think I remember somebody telling me this, actually. So yeah, this symbol is called a grave accent, and it's next to the 1 on a US style keyboard. It looks like a little quote, but it's like not. It's like a sideways quote. So the grave accent is going to allow us to write variables in the string by using a $sign and then curly brace, and then we're going to do this dot Pokemon.level. So this variable is now going to be displayed here. The purpose of this is to have text before it, without having to end the string and then do a plus symbol, and then it's a much cleaner way of doing things, basically. Matter of fact, we're going to do it up here as well. Name. As you can see. Alright, so once we have our little window there, we're going to go back down to the create windows, or the make windows rather. This dot window details equals new window details, new rectangle. For the X position this time is going to be 240 because that's the width of our command window. We're going to do get when LH2 like we did before. Graphics.width minus 240. And the same height here. This dot add child, this dot window details. Now, if you were to test this right now, you wouldn't see anything because the window itself is transparent. So what we're going to do now is this dot window details dot pkmn, the Pokemon value that we have, is equal to ID. And then this dot window details dot refresh. And there we go. No, not refresh that. That's not what I wanted to do. So in theory, there we go. We should have the text on the right. You can see. Tells you the name right there, Bulbasaur, level 5. You can have the description there if you want to as well. Alright, so now we're going to make use of plugin commands. So instead of calling the scene through here, we're going to get rid of the scene title initialize. Now, so we're going to create a category called plugin commands, and we're going to do plugin manager dot register command, lowercase r for register, capital letter for C, in the command, and then the name of our plugin file. So this is thing.js, so we just do thing. And this is the name. By the way, the reason it was already default is because I kind of copied from this because I didn't feel like typing it. So it's going to be called, we're just going to call it open. And then we're going to do scene manager dot push instead of go to my scene. So above the help section, we're going to do at command open, at text open Pokemon window. This is the text that's going to show up. You'll see what I mean in a moment. And we're not going to have any arguments in the plugin command. So once you save that, go to our plugin command, and you can see thing now has a thing, and it's open Pokemon window. So now, when we play test our game, and get your eardrums destroyed, boom! Talk to him, and the Pokemon window opens. Now last but not least, before we close, we are going to do a set handler function. for the window option. This is going to allow us to cancel, basically, and go back to the window, the scene. Go back to scene map or whatever scene that we were on when this was called. So to do that, this dot window opt dot set handler cancel. I almost said back, but it's supposed to be cancel. This dot pop scene dot bind this. I believe it's this. Let me double check that so I don't look like an idiot. Yeah. So basically, we're binding the pop scene command to the cancel action, which is the X button or whatever you use as your control scheme. It's the back button. So if we save that, go back here, press cancel, boom. You can now return to your daily shenanigans. Alrighty. So, I hope this tutorial has been helpful for you guys, and I really appreciate you guys watching. And yeah, I will see you all in the next one. Bye!